So here's 5 simple things that you can do. 5 simple things that we can start right now. Tuning that website to be this, I'm going to call it a customer intelligence engine. Look right here. This idea of 360 degrees view of your customer. Right? Back in the 90s, I was an IT guy, and I was implementing a CRM system at the time. And I remember my sales guy telling me, it's going to be a new age because everyone's going to be reading off the same page. We're all going to understand this customer. It's going to be consistent. It's going to be wonderful. But along came the web, and this huge new touch point happened, and it was completely not in the CRM. And so that 360-degree view never happened because we never understood what was going on everywhere else outside of the handful of touches that salesperson may have had with you, or you might have called into a call center. The second thing I think you can start to do is think about nurturing that customer. I use the word prospect here, but really this is any customer, and this is any kind of customer, whether it's internal or external. Nurturing them towards their goal. I use the word solution. You can interchangeably put their desire, their goal, but nurturing them towards it, because it's rarely that they just come in and buy something right away. Unless it's some small, low-ticket item, they're not just coming in to immediately buy. Unless you're like me and I'm the typical male, heat-seeking buyer where I just walk into the store and zoom into the right item, buy it, and I'm out. But not everyone's like that. Most people aren't like that. So you need to nurture them. You need to overcome objections. And you also want to think about this as an experience, right? In many touches and consistent additive touches. I use the word episodic. Think of episodes of your favorite TV station or your TV show. Every show is an episode in that story. And you're telling a story to that customer, to that employee, and you're giving them incremental information because we do better that way as humans. We learn that way. And then figure out what worked. Look back. Understand the patterns, right? Seek the patterns that worked. Look at them. Tie them to the outcomes that you as an organization wanted. If you were selling something, you want to see when you won the opportunity, and you want to tie that back to all the things that brought you there. So look for those patterns. And then lastly, and I don't want to steal Eric's thunder, because Eric's going to talk a lot about community and where that can go. And I'll talk a little bit more about it in the afternoon session. But just thinking about community from one very simple perspective of blending trust and building trust. Because let's face it, online, if you're an organization, you have very low credibility nowadays. People don't, in the age of Twitter where someone can just destroy your brand in about 25 minutes, 5 angry parents can bring Johnson & Johnson to its knees because of a rash that happened on their baby. It's very, very quick to lose your brand in this world where everyone has a microphone. Everyone has a megaphone, right? That's what The Tipping Point says in his book. Is this idea that now the ants have microphones. Everyone has a loud voice. So we need to use community content to our own advantage as organizations to build trust and overcome trust, because they don't believe us. We don't believe a sales guy usually. But if everyone else says it's true, and you read the Amazon articles and you read a bunch of other reviews and they all say the same thing, then you believe it. So use that to your advantage. Okay, the website is a customer intelligence engine. You can learn a lot about people by their behaviors. You can learn a lot about what they're interested in, but this isn't really any different than the offline world. Michael set this up beautifully for me. This is what people want. You can watch. Good salespeople will step back and shut up and listen. I use the men's clothing store example. And I go to buy a suit, and I'm looking around and I'm trying to figure out what I need, and eventually the salesperson walks over and they kind of figure out the color sets I'm looking at, and they start asking me some questions. We have a conversation. I explain I need to have a suit. It needs to be comfortable all day. I'm standing on my feet, and he diagnoses me. He figures out what I'm looking for, and he makes recommendations and suggestions. Your website can do the same thing, should be doing the same thing. This interactive dialogue, and of course learning all these things and putting that in the CRM would be ideal. But think about your website as a customer intelligence engine. Think about this as a vehicle for sensing that customer, learning about that customer. That is the number one thing that you need to know. Now, there's a huge resource you all have in your organization, and I bet you never thought about it. Your salespeople, or your customer service people in a call center, or anyone who's customer-facing at all. Bring them into a room. Bring them in a room and ask them some simple questions. What do your customers want? What questions do they ask? What things are they struggling with? What objections do you overcome? There's a white paper I wrote with a guy named Jeff Bach not so long ago, and it's up on sitecore.net. I encourage you, if you haven't read it, to read it. And it's shaping the customer experience is the title. And the idea behind this, and it sets out a framework for just how to have some of these conversations. But you have this huge untapped resource in your organization that know your customer better than anybody else. Get them to tell you the questions. Get them to answer those questions, and then have them tell you how you overcome those objections. That's so simple. You could do that in an afternoon in a conference room. Do that. I think if nothing else, if you take nothing else out of my session today, you do that. Go and learn about them and figure out, right, in a perfect world, if you could know 5 things about a potential customer that you would be in front of, what are those 5 things? And what would knowing those 5 things do for you in your process in engaging that customer? Just figure that out. You figure that out, and you will build a beautiful set of data that you want to collect in. And then use your website to learn about those things. Now, once you've built this, and there's an actual matrix that we talk about in the white paper that you can actually construct all of this information. And once you know what those things are, you can start to offer expertise and offer services and offer content to them and start to move them forward in that process, right? Because the salespeople can help you lay out the buying stages. They can help you understand the objections. You can figure out what kinds of things people need to know. And every industry is different. Every business is different. So figure out what your things are, what your process stages are, but then think about how to proactively move people from step to step. And by doing that, you now are in a lot more control. Imagine this situation. You're an organization that sells to, let's call it consumers. And you have an inside sales force or a call center that handles how to sell to those customers. And now you're asking someone to start cold calling customers. Now it's probably not something every one of you do, but just hang with me for a minute. Now, if you could give that salesperson or that person talking to those customers the 5 hot buttons that a customer is really interested in, and before they ever pick up the phone and talk to any of them, they knew the 5 things they were really interested in. Of the 15 things you could possibly talk about them, you would increase their ability to build interest in that person and actually even possibly create a sale. Would you do it? Would you want to do it? If you could increase your sales, if you could reduce your cost of sales with that. This is the kind of stuff we're talking about. And it all comes from understanding. It all comes from this idea of the customer intelligence engine. And of course, for those of you who have looked at the Sitecore Online Marketing Suite and have thought about that technology, that's an engine for doing this, right? Scoring your content, building your content, but also think about it this way. You can build content that is like a honeypot to attract the bees. And you can actually craft content that is what customers care about. So it's very customer-centric. And when they go look at that content, it tells you about them. And so again, this is the idea behind this idea of the customer intelligence engine. And in a lot of ways, it's content marketing. For those of you who understand the principles behind content marketing, it's about creating content that is what the customer cares about. And by using that content to educate yourself about their desires and their interests and their tasks and their goals, you learn, and by learning, you can service them and you can guide them. And here's just one of the screenshots from the Online Marketing Suite. Here's where you can start to score that content and build that customer intelligence. And what you'll learn is what they care about and what kind of segmentation you might have about them and the kinds of areas and typical scenarios. But you've learned a lot of this from your salespeople. They've told you what is interesting and important to these people, and now you can service them better. You can also start to qualify them better. For those of you in the B2B space, this is really important, right? I want to know how hot that lead is. I want to know how far along in their decision-making process they are. I might want to know what sales stage they're in. Similar in the consumer world, but a little shorter, a little faster. In the government world, you may want to understand what kind of organization it is that you're dealing with, or what kind of person. Is it an individual? Is it a business? Who are they, and what are their concern points? All those things become very valuable. In the intranet, it's the same thing. Where are they in their life stage with you as an organization? How are they a seasoned vet? Are they a new, first-time hire? Where are they in that, continuum, and how can I service them better?